So I was grabbing coffee with a friend not too long ago. She works at a small community bank, which has been there forever. And she just shakes her head and says, I've got 5 different regulators who could walk through my door on any given Tuesday. How did we end up here? Right? And then I laughed because honestly, that question comes up all the time. Okay? Not just from banks, but also from fintech founders, treasury teams, and even students trying to understand how this system actually works. Okay? And once you understand why the system looks this way, a lot of things, including where AI fits, start to make a lot more sense. Okay? Hi, I am 𝗕𝗵𝗂𝗏, a finance and fintech consultant. Let's talk about our dual banking system first. Here's the part most people never get explained clearly. Okay? The US runs something called a dual banking system. It's just a fancy way of saying banks can be chartered either by the federal government or by their state. Okay? Sounds simple, right? But that one choice opens the door to multiple regulators, sometimes at the same time. Now, think of it like having more than one boss. Not because anyone planned for it, but because the system evolved after a lot of painful lessons, bank runs, crashes, and some truly ugly failures in early 1900s. Okay? Nobody sat in a room and said, let's make this complicated. It just became that way. Now, let's talk about who those regulators actually are without the textbook language. Now, let's talk about the big 3 regulators, right? First up, the Federal Reserve, or the Fed. I tell people to think of the Fed like the conductor of an orchestra. They're not just watching the banks, they're also managing the entire flow of the money into the ecosystem. When interest rates go up or down, that's the Fed pulling levers. They do it 3 main ways. Number 1, how much banks must keep in reserve. Number 2, what it costs bank to borrow. Number 3, buying or selling government bonds to push money into or pull it out of the economy. Okay? Then there's the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Okay? These are the folks who oversee nationally chartered banks. So they grant charters, they approve expansions, and regularly check in to make sure banks are not taking reckless risks with customer money. Okay? And finally, the FDIC. The name everyone recognizes because of that sticker on the door when you go to the bank. So they insure deposits and step in when a bank fails. When things go wrong, they're the cleanup crew, protecting depositors and figuring out what the next step is going to be. Okay? Now, here's where things get interesting, because depending on how a bank is structured, more than one of these agencies may be watching at the same time. This is why banks fail cautious. It's why they ask for so much documentation. It's why new products move slowly. And it's why compliance seems to drive everything. They've got examiners showing up regularly, and if something goes wrong, the consequences are real. And here's the part people miss. This isn't just red tape. It's intentional redundancy, multiple sets of eyes, checks and balances. Is it inefficient? Absolutely. But it's also one of the reasons we haven't had another Great Depression. And this is exactly where AI quietly starts to matter. So where does AI fit in this, right? When people hear AI in banking, they may think chatbots or trading algorithms. But honestly, the biggest impact right now is much less flashy, okay? So AI helps banks handle complexity. It helps with documentation review, regulatory reporting, transaction monitoring, pattern detection. All of the stuff regulators deeply care about. So instead of replacing judgment, AI supports it. Okay? It reduces human error, it speeds up reviews, and helps banks stay compliant without grinding everything to a halt. In other words, AI does not remove regulation. It helps banks survive it. Okay? And this matters far beyond the banks themselves. So why does this matter to you? Right? If you're running treasury operations or building a fintech or just trying to work effectively with banks, this structure explains a lot, right? When a bank says we cannot do that, it's often not their unwillingness, it's the regulatory reality. So the smartest teams do not fight the system, they design around it. So here's a takeaway I would give a colleague over coffee. You don't need to memorize every regulator or rule, but you do need to respect the layers. And so if you factor regulatory complexity and the role AI can play in managing it into your plans early, you'll save yourself months of frustration later. And if a bank tells you compliance is the reason, they are probably telling the truth. Thanks for watching.